right, students, here we are, lab 29. It's actually our last lab, so let me give you a little speech. Hey students, here we are. It's going to be our last lab today. Yay. Okay, so we will be getting started pretty soon here on our rat dissection, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so stick to the end, and you'll get to see all the stuff that we've learned about as far as the human body and what's involved in it. Okay, and then I'll talk in the lecture about what's going on with the final and stuff like that. Okay, just wanted to show you my face once. All right, see you soon. Okay, so here we are, and we made it. So I'm very proud of you that we were able to stick it out here till the end. Such an unusual thing we've had to go through, such a trial, and so I'm just, I'm happy that we got to the end. Okay, so what I decided about the final exam was that it'll be online. Okay, so I'm going to send it through the Google Classroom. You need to make sure, I think all of you are already, you signed up for that. And what I'll do is after Wednesday, so Wednesday at class time, which would be 9 o'clock, you would be watching this video, or whenever you want, of course. But then after that time, I will, the next day or so, make available the final exam, okay? And you'll go in, it's 20 questions. They're multiple choice. So you will pick, A, B, C, D, that kind of thing. And then you'll get, at the end, there's one write-in, short answer, bonus question, also worth 5 points. So if you get everything correct, then you can get a grand total of 105 points. Okay? So I decided to do it that way because it should, if everything works right, then the Google Classroom should grade it for you, right? And it should be ready to go. And then I can put together your grades pretty quickly after that. I have calculated some of your grades out, and I forgot to send those. I'm sorry. But I'll get those to you. All right, so then once that happens, I will get that final grade to you. I also will send out after Wednesday the quiz keys. Okay, so the keys. I was trying to see if I could correct your quiz and send that corrected quiz back to you, and it got too complicated, and I'm just kind of out of patience with my tech abilities at this point. And so I'll give you just keys that you'll be able to study those, and you'll be ready for the final exam. Okay, so no worries right there. You can always email me if you have any questions about that. Just let me know. All right, so we're going to get to the very last system in the body known as the lymphatic system. It's kind of nice that we're ending with this year because of this thing we're dealing with, this viral infection that we are having to endure. And what I want to explain to you about the lymphatic system is that God has designed this beautiful system in our body that is adequate and capable of taking care of viruses and bacteria. Okay, so there's nothing to be afraid of here. Now, we know that people have died from this virus, very sadly, and the problem was a failure of their immune system. Okay, so if our immune systems are functioning properly, we should be able to meet up against these plagues that happen upon us. I mean, if you think about it, if you know anything about history, when they had the Black Plague, when 1/3 of the entire population of Europe died, you may wonder, what about the 2/3 that didn't die? Okay, well, they had a lymphatic system that was somehow able to handle the infection of that bacterial plague that came along. Okay, so my point is that bacteria and viruses are part of God's creation as well, and they're actually out there to make us stronger. Okay, so if you face up against this virus and your body fights against it, it will actually make your immune system very strong. And so we furthermore want to culture our system, our lymphatic system, so that it's strong by choosing proper food sources, by taking care of ourselves, by getting enough vitamins in our diet, and like getting sunshine on our skin and things like this. Okay, so there's nothing to worry about. God knows exactly what he's doing, and this beautiful, beautiful design of the lymphatic system is just extraordinary, what he's done for us. Okay, so mainly what the lymphatic system is doing, I have a couple of just introduction points here, and then I'll tell you when to start writing things down. So we remove excess fluid from our body tissues, so we have a drainage system right here. So it's a drainage system for our blood and for our body. It takes lymph fluid from it checks it for any kind of microorganisms or other contaminants, namely viruses, that might be in there, and then there'll be a response, okay? So there will be a response of our body. So we get an early warning system, and then we can fight against this with specialized cells that are living in our lymph system, and those specialized cells are called lymphocytes. And the lymphocytes are blood cells. They're white blood cells. They are made in the bone marrow like all the rest of the blood, but then they go through this special treatment of our body so that they can be taught to fight against disease. It's fascinating. And then furthermore, the lymphatic system is responsible for processing fats that we eat. In our intestines, we have that little lacteal vessel that comes up, if you remember that takes and is able to deal with fats in our diets. Okay, so this picture over here to the right, you can see the immune system. These green things look a little bit like veins, don't they? Okay, so it's very similar to veins. I'll show you some pictures of what they look like, the vessels look like here in just a minute. But I want you to see that they actually come alongside vessels, blood vessels. There's one major difference, however. With the blood vessels, we know they have a pump that pumps blood all the way through our body, and that pump, of course, is the heart. Well, the lymphatic system does not have a pump. All right, so the way that the fluid, known as lymph fluid, gets through the lymph vessels is a different way than a pump. What happens is we have large muscle movement that moves it around, and I'll get to that in more detail in a minute. So along with these lymph vessels and this lymph fluid, we have some lymph organs like the spleen and the tonsils and some other things that we'll be looking at in more detail in just a moment. All right, so that's our little introduction, and here you're going to start looking at filling in some blanks. Okay, so we have some main structures of the lymph system. First of all, we have lymph fluid. All right, so I'll get to you in just a minute exactly what lymph fluid is, but this picture shows it a little bit. Notice we have cells here. These look like epithelial cells. And picture a blood vessel right over here. And remember, the blood vessel is bringing something to the cells. It's bringing oxygen, and it's bringing nutrients. So the oxygen nutrients will diffuse out of the blood vessel into the tissue, and it will bathe the tissue in that fluid that comes out of the blood. Now I want you to think of it this way. The liquid portion of the blood, which is called plasma, actually leaks out somewhat into the tissues, distributing the oxygen and the nutrients. Well, and then it goes back into the blood vessel. But about 10% of it will actually end up in a lymph vessel. Right here, okay? They have these big holes in it, and it can just leak right into it. We'll see that. And once it enters into that lymph vessel, it is now known as lymph fluid. So technically, where did it come from? It came from the serum of the blood. But now that it's in a lymph vessel, it's lymph fluid. Second thing, we have lymph nodes and lymph vessels. So we see a vessel here, okay? We'll get to the node in a minute. And then we have lymph organs. We have the spleen, the thymus, the tonsils, and something known as adenoids that are also in your throat. So we'll get to those here in just a minute. So fill those into that top, those three boxes at the top of page 70. All right, if you need more time, you can pause. So what exactly is lymph fluid? Well, it's the watery fluid found between your cells. We call it interstitial fluid. It's similar to the liquid portion of the blood because that's where it came from, okay? It comes from the blood. It just was filled with nutrients and stuff, okay? And so then we have right here, it says that the liquid, this liquid is the drainage system for blood. Now there's a blank in your book right here that says the drainage system for blood, and I guess that's what we want in there, but there's also a time we talk about the drainage system for the body, which I mentioned already. So if you ended up with the word body in that blank, that would be okay. Okay, so like I said, there's no pump, there's going to be muscle movement. So let's take a little closer look. Here is a vein and a venule. We're getting real close here. Here is an arteriole, very small artery. Then we're getting into our capillaries right here. Notice these lymph vessels. They're just kind of stuck in there, and they're open at the top. They're just open right there, and they're leaky. Things can leak into them. So this is the tissues, and that interstitial fluid coming in between the cells, coming from the blood vessel, will just leak right into that vessel. So about 10% of the plasma leaks into the lymph vessel, and the other 90% goes right back into the bloodstream. Okay, so to take that back in there, and furthermore take things out like CO2, right? So that's part of that thing. So it's a drainage thing going on. So what's going on? Why do we put some of that serum into the lymph vessels and have this lymph fluid? Well, we're going to see that its job is to check it, to do a spot check to see if everything is okay. So here it comes. So here comes our artery containing high pressure oxygenated blood. It's coming through. Then it's going to our vein right here. It leaks out to the vessels, to the cells. All right, so it's leaking all this stuff. So the oxygen and food passes out of the capillaries. There's our lymph capillary just waiting. Goes right into it. Then it moves through the lymph vessel, through large muscle movement. It stops at a lymph node and gets checked, and then eventually gets emptied right back into the bloodstream. Notice there are little valves on the lymph vessel as well, just like a vein right there. Okay, so it's right alongside it. Okay, so these vessels are right alongside our blood vessels. So how does it move? Well, we know that it's the watery fluid found between your cells. It's the drainage system for the body. Remember earlier I said the blood, here it says the body. The amazing design of this system is that it's moved through the body by muscle contraction. There's no need for another pump like the heart. Okay, so I'm going to show you here what's going on. Here is a lymph vessel. When our muscle is relaxed, that lymph is sitting in there. When my muscle squeezes it, it squeezes it up through, and see that little flap there will keep it from washing backward. So think about this. Sometimes when you're a little sick, you got a cold or whatever, and you feel crummy, and you're laying in bed, and mom brings you some chicken soup or, some juice, or trying to keep you hydrated by giving you plenty of fluids. I like to drink, hot tea with a little honey in it, stuff like this. Well, you're laying there in bed and you just feel crummy, But then sometimes you have to get up and move around. Sometimes you get up and move around and you say, hey, I feel a little better. That's because your muscles are moving and you're squeezing your lymph around, and it's moving that lymph throughout your lymph system, and it is part of your immune system, so it is making you feel better. So one of the best things you can do, not overdo it of course, but when you're feeling a little sick, just move around. Okay, so I always think about if you make your arms go around in big circles. You can even do it while laying in bed. Maybe do a few sit-ups, something like this. One of the great things you can do is jump on a trampoline. It really uses your muscles quite well, especially if you use your whole body, like your arms over your head and stuff like this. The problem is when you're sick, sometimes jumping on a trampoline might make you feel more sick. So maybe when you just start feeling a little better, a trampoline might be a good plan. Okay, there you go. Here's what our lymph vessels look like. So they're kind of like a vein where they have these one-way valves, okay? They are leaky. Stuff can leak into them. They have open ends, so it leaks into that little tube at the top, but it also can leak in through these cells right here. So it allows that lymph fluid to enter in pretty easily, and then they're one-way valves, and remember, they're being squeezed through by muscle movement. They do not make a loop like the circulatory system. The ends are closed. So we have the opened end and then a closed end. Okay, so when we see right here, this shows the picture of it, and it's leaky though, so stuff will leak past the end right there. So the fluid eventually winds up being dumped back into the blood system after it goes through a check in the lymph nodes and things like this. There's a big dumping system called the right lymphatic duct, draining into the upper right quadrant of the body, and the thoracic duct draining to the rest. Okay, so it just dumps it all right back in there. How are lymph vessels different from veins? Good question. Well, their walls are thinner, they have more valves, and there are lymph nodes along the way. Okay, so they're along the way. So we're going to be looking at those lymph nodes a little closer right now. So the functions of the lymph nodes, we're looking at our questions 1, 2, and 3 down there at sort of the middle of the page. So one of the things is immunity. So we have 500 to 600 in our body. They're distributed in various areas. I'll show you a picture of where we can find them. Sometimes they're in your neck, for instance, and sometimes you might say, oh, my glands are swollen. Okay, but they're not glands, those are your nodes, and that's because they're doing their job. Okay, so you got a sore throat, then your lymph nodes right there are processing your lymph and figuring out what's making you have your sore throat, and it starts to make these cells to go fight what's causing your sore throat. And so when they get all big like that, then that means they're doing their job. It's a good thing. All right, so number 1, immunity is to produce antibodies and lymphocytes. It probably should go the other direction. Lymphocytes and antibodies, because the antibodies are made by the lymphocytes. Remember, lymphocytes are white blood cells that are made in the bone, and then they have this incredible ability to sit and wait in a lymph node until something comes along that needs to be dealt with. Okay, we're going to get to some details of that in just a minute, which is going to produce for us immunity. Immunity is a big subject, and we're just going to barely touch it today. Okay, when you someday take anatomy and physiology, biology 2, when you're a senior or junior in high school, you're going to see the complexity of the immune system. Secondly, it filters the lymph fluid. Filter the lymph fluid, removing old stuff out of there, any contaminants, just filtering it. So the lymph node can actually serve as a trash collector, if you will. And then thirdly, a supply station for lymphocytes. Like I said, the lymphocytes are lying in wait, just waiting inside that lymph node to get to work. Okay, so it's a supply station for lymphocytes. Remember, they're a type of white blood cell. As the lymph fluid passes through the node, the lymphocytes contained in the lymph node are presented with contaminants that have come from the tissues. Therefore, they can start to make specific antibodies against the contaminants. So you may have heard about the antibody test for this virus that's going on. That's how they get antibodies, because your lymphocytes are going to make them. How do they do that? We're going to see. So our immunity here, this is the same thing we said, but what I want to put this up here, I want you to sketch this somewhere in your book. I thought there was a place to sketch this, and I'm not seeing it right now. Okay, so find a little spot, maybe right there where, you know, there's that little blank spot next to the word lymph nodes on the right side of the page. You can draw this. Okay, so it's a little clump, and what I want you to see is that it's got several vessels coming into it. These are called afferent lymphatic vessels. This is how the lymph is getting into it, but it only has one big one. It looks like two, but that's a big one headed out. So what happens is, this is like you get to a bridge over a river, right? The traffic's all coming in and you all have to slow down at the bridge. Well, they're all slowing down so that all through here, the lymph can be processed. Inside this cool cell right here is something called a germinal center. So there's a lymph node sitting in here, waiting. And if something's in the blood that needs to be dealt with, then the lymph node will say, hey, germinal center, that means to grow. We're going to proliferate. We're going to make more lymphocytes. Now that's extraordinary, because where are blood cells made? In the bone, except these. These were original ones were made in the bone, and now they can go through rapid mitosis and make new lymphocytes right there in the lymph node. And when they're doing it very quickly, that's when those nodes will start to swell a little bit. All right, so you can draw this or not. It's up to you. So we can find them in various locations. They're really, really concentrated in our neck and throat area, because think about it. The stuff that's coming through our nose and our mouth, that's how we're going to get in touch with that virus, right? And so we have them right there ready to fight, okay? And so you can see they're under your tongue, they're under your jaw, they're around your ears, they're all down in here. These are the deeper ones right there. All right, so these white cells, these lymphocytes, are what we call macrophages. Now, a macrophage is this is the simple one, the simple lymphocyte, which will eat up and engulf bacteria. So an immature macrophage, if you will engulf E. coli. These ones are eating these E. coli. There are the E. coli right there, okay? So they're eating it up. That's what a macrophage does. This is talking about those vessels coming into the lymph nodes and the ones going out. So remember, we had lots of afferent ones bringing it toward, only one big efferent one, exferre. These exit the node. There's only one big one of those. I showed you that in the picture. This is what it looks like too. This might actually be easier for you to draw right here. Okay, so our afferent vessels are here. Our efferent vessel is right there. Our germinal centers, where lymphocytes can be produced, right there. Okay. Oh, all right, there we go. I guess we're going on to our lymphocytes, and yeah, we'll go on to those. Our additional lymphatic organ systems would be our tonsils, adenoids. So yeah, in your chart, you're going to write spleen, tonsils, adenoids, and thymus. So tonsils and adenoids, those are in our throat. So they help protect our throat. You can only see the tonsils. Like if you open your mouth and look down there, they've got little lumps on the back right there. Those are your tonsils. Some of you might have had your tonsils removed, or you may know somebody who's had their tonsils removed. Sometimes they get inflamed over and over again, and they just prove to be a source of infection for a body, and so they can take them out. So we can live without our tonsils. We can live without our adenoids, but we're taking out lymphatic tissue that is very important in fighting disease. So it's the best if you can keep them. All right, keep your tonsils and adenoids if you can. They work just like they're like a very large lymph node. Okay, so they're going to sample bacteria and viruses at the enter the body and help to form antibodies against them. They don't filter anything, but they do notify the lymph nodes. They notify the lymphocytes to be on the alert that there's something foreign inside the body. All right, so you can see them right here. So you can, if you, like I said, if you open your mouth, you can see kind of a lump on the side of your right there. If they're inflamed, you can really see them. Okay, the adenoids, do they show them even over here? Up, see, they're way up there. We can't see those in our mouth because they're way up there. But I have heard of people who have had their adenoids removed, and that's because they get really swollen and kind of block off your nasal passage. But that's not very common. All right, our thymus, this is a fascinating organ. It's found down here. It's like a little butterfly-shaped thing right down here in our chest. Now, it's where immature lymphocytes mature. So lymphocytes are made in the blood. They go to the thymus. The thymus educates them. It's called a thymic education. And they are turned into a special kind of a lymphocyte called a T lymphocyte. All right, T for thymus. Now, something interesting about the thymus, and I've always taught this, that it's very active when you're young, and as you grow older, the thymus just atrophies away, and it doesn't work as well. And I thought that was just normal. That's how it was designed. Well, I've come to find out that it atrophies away because we're not taking care of it. So if we take care of it, it will continue to be good and we'll continue to have a strong immune system so that our lymphocytes can continue to get educated and turn into T lymphocytes. And the best way to do that is through taking supplements or having enough of the type of food in your body that will keep your thymus, what we call inflated. It starts to get deflated if we don't take care of it. And if I'm remembering properly, the number one mineral that keeps your thymus healthy is zinc. And it's interesting, you may have heard a little bit about that now with people who are dealing with this coronavirus, that one of the things the doctors give people and they survive is zinc. Yeah, so zinc turns out to be very, very good for your immune system. So you may know this already. There was this stuff I know for a little while that was like a, what was that called? Zicam, and you could stick it up in your nose, when you had a cold and it made you feel better pretty quickly. Okay, it's zinc, y'all, and it does make you feel better. And guess what? It's making your thymus be more productive. So therefore, your lymphocytes are more productive. So take your zinc. Some people take it in a multivitamin, that kind of thing. All right, another organ is our spleen. So our spleen is in our abdomen right here. And it actually filters blood. Where lymph nodes filter lymph fluid, the spleen filters blood. Okay, so it removes abnormal cells, old defective red blood cells in something known as red pulp inside your spleen right here. Okay, and it makes disease-fighting components for the immune system. It helps make antibodies in the white pulp. Where is it? In the white pulp right here. Okay, the white part. Now notice there's lots of blood vessels in there. The spleen is a very vascular organ. Also notice where it is, right here. So there have been people who have been in car accidents before, and there's a seat belt coming right like this, okay, probably the passenger. And if they have a collision and their seat belt catches them, the idea of the seat belt is to save us by keeping our head from getting damaged, so to stop brain damage. But it can cause bodily damage, and one of the things it can do is it can cause your spleen to burst, and your spleen has a lot of blood supplied to it, so if that happens, there could be an internal bleeding situation that could become very serious. So if that is the case, sometimes somebody would have to have their spleen removed. So you don't need to have your spleen to survive, but if you take it out, you're taking out a large amount of lymphatic tissue. So the idea here is if you don't have a spleen, your immune system will not be as strong. So it's a good idea to keep a hold of your spleen. So take care of it. All right, it does red blood cell recycling. Here shows all those blood vessels coming in there, right? And the white pulp and the red pulp. right there. When the spleen removes old or defective red blood cells, it breaks them down and then recycles them. It takes iron and hemoglobin and uses them in new cells. The red pulp also has macrophages. So remember what macrophages do. They're going to eat things up. Notice that the spleen does not have lymphatic vessels entering into it. It has blood. Okay, so remember it's filtering the blood. The blood cells pass through a maze of narrow passages. Let's go back and see it. A maze of narrow passages. Yeah. The young, flexible ones that can make the passage, they survive. The older, less flexible red blood cells get caught in the mesh. Once they're caught, then broken down by the macrophages. And the reusable part are sent to the bone marrow to make new red blood cells. How about that? So very efficient recycling program going on in our spleen. And it's right about here, okay? Here's our stomach, pancreas, spleen. Okay, blood vessels, lots coming there. All right, now we're going to talk about those lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are powerful infection fighters. Boom, there it is. All right, they're going to go fight those infections. So we have a couple. We talked about T cells, right? They are involved in macrophages to phagocytize or eat foreign invaders. B lymphocytes mature into plasma cells that produce antibodies and memory cells. Memory B cells remember that you had the disease before, and they remember how to make antibodies against them. For instance, when I was a kid, I had chickenpox. So I got a rash on my body, and it was itchy and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't too terrible. Well, now I have these cells in my body that if chickenpox comes toward me into my body, my cells make antibodies against it because they recognize it. They recognize that enemy, and they know how to dispatch it. They know how to get rid of it. But we also have these cool ones called natural killer cells. And natural killer cells are just made for our body. They're kind of wandering around. They're white blood cells. They're wandering around our body. And they're types of lymphocytes, right? And when they find something, they will attack it, and by punching a hole in it. So you think about a cancer cell. A cancer cell is growing out of control. And so what they can do, these natural killer cells will go and attack cancer cells and eat them up. All right, so we have a natural way of dealing with cancer in our bodies. How about that? The problem is, and the reason why people get cancer is that their natural killer cells get overwhelmed. Okay, so there's just not enough of them. And so we succumb to the cancer, we have to treat it and this kind of thing. So how does a macrophage eat? They actually, right here you can see they move their cells around, and they absorb those bacteria, and they break them up and then spit out the parts that are not usable anymore. Okay, they just eat them up and they digest them. So this brings us to the question of vaccines. You know about vaccines, right? Yeah. So it's a weakened or inactive version of a pathogen that stimulates the body's production of antibodies and to destroy the pathogen. So what's it's trying to do? We're at the bottom of page 70 here. What a vaccine is trying to do, it's trying to mimic our natural immune system, okay? So we found out how the immune system was working. We said, hey, can we introduce a disease into our body so we can make antibodies before we actually get sick with it, okay? For instance, I had chickenpox. You may not have had chickenpox because you may have had a vaccine against chickenpox. And what we're doing is we're injecting into you a little bit of chickenpox so your body will make antibodies against it without you having to go through the disease, okay? So that's the idea of vaccination, and the science of it is sound science. It's good science. The problem with vaccines, and you can talk to your parents about this, how they feel about vaccines, is that we are trying to have so many diseases vaccinated against that we're actually doing harm to the system that God designed. So God designed a system that can handle it without our help. So the thing is we want a little more control, right? We want to say, well, I don't know anybody with chickenpox, therefore I need to get vaccinated so I won't get chickenpox, okay? Well, or you can just wait to get chickenpox. Yeah, so it's one of those questions, and every family makes their own decisions based on what they would like to do in this particular case. In my opinion, I think we just have too many vaccines, that's all. Our immune system is perfectly capable and able to handle the stuff that's out there. So how does that antibody work? Okay, all cells that are coming in, so we have our cells, all right? They all have surface receptors and other things sticking out of the cell membrane. All this stuff is sticking out right here. It's like a little fingerprint, if you will. And that is called a surface antigen. So a surface antigen. It's almost like a fingerprint on the outside of a cell, and it has like a particular, protein sequence on there. We can see various things joining up to them right here to our cell. That's kind of a funny picture. This just shows a few of the different kind of things on the outside. So here's what happens. Antibodies are like a lock and key. Okay, so here is the surface of the cell that's invading, let's say. We call that a surface antigen. Okay, so what happens is our white blood cell comes along, our lymphocyte, and recognizes that this is not from your body, that it's foreign. Okay, so it starts to make an antibody against this. Specifically, you see how that's going to fit right there? And when it does that, it can immobilize this and not allow that pathogen to reproduce. Okay, so it's like a lock and key. Notice this one's going to fit with this one. This one fits, I guess, with this one. I don't know, maybe that one. I'm not sure. But it's going to specifically fight that. And so these are called immunoglobulins, or IGs. And there are different types of IGs. We have IgA, IgG, IgM. And so immunoglobulin G and immunoglobulin M. And those fight different things and at different times of the infection. Which leads us to something known as herd immunity. So we're looking at a herd right there. This theory states that if enough people are making antibodies or exposed to the disease, then we can make antibodies against it, and therefore the disease won't proliferate. All right, so we're thinking here, if we vaccinate people, that even the ones that aren't vaccinated will be protected because the disease is not transferring through a lot of people. So right now we have this coronavirus, and it appears to be very communicable, very contagious. So you can catch it very easily. Fortunately, it's not very deadly. Now that might surprise you a little bit. We're hearing a lot of hype about it. About 98.8% of the time, if you get this, 98.8, that's a good grade, right? 98.8% of the people who get coronavirus will survive it. And once they've survived it, they have antibodies they're producing against it. How about that? Okay? Specifically against it. And therefore, they won't get it again. Now, of course, they're questioning, does the immune system work as well with this virus? Well, I don't know why it wouldn't. This is how we figured out that it's working, so I'm not sure why it wouldn't be working for coronavirus as well. And so the idea of keeping everybody separated is just putting off the time for us to get our herd immunity. So truthfully, we ought to all be together. Okay, that's my theory on it. You can talk to your folks. They might disagree with me on that one. Okay, and herd immunity is actually turning into a little bit of a controversial subject. But you'll read about it in your book. It's a widely held theory, that's been around way before what we're talking about right now. So, it's a touchy subject right now. This is fun. We have these glands in our eyes called lacrimal glands, and they produce a fluid called tears. In fact, I think you're turning to page 71 at this point. Is that right? Yeah. And so it says here, is having a good cry good for you? And the answer you're going to put in that blank is yes, it is. It turns out that the lacrimal glands, you can see that's underlined, are located in the eyes. They produce tears. They're mostly there to keep your eyes moist, okay, to keep your eyes protected. But they also have all sorts of chemicals that actually keep your eye from getting infected. All right, so your eyes, have you noticed that we don't get very many infections in our eyes? There's that one we call pink eye, right? That's one that we can think of. But mostly if we have an eye problem, it's because we got something blown into it by the wind or something. Now, it turns out that if you take the regular tears, so like right now you have tears in your eyes are wet, okay? But if you cry because you're sad about something, they have actually analyzed those tears and compared them with each other. Tears from emotional stress actually have chemicals, toxic chemicals that we're releasing from our body. And that's why after a good cry, you just feel better. Even if like you're watching a sad movie, crying will just make you feel better because you will release. So crying is good for you. All right. They produce tears all the time. Yeah, so that's underlined right there. Okay, we're going to watch a little video on this real quick.
Tears are necessary to keep our eyes moist and healthy. The lacrimal gland and other small glands inside the eyelid and on the white part of the eye constantly produce tears to keep the eye healthy. Tears drain from the eye through two small openings called upper and lower puncta, located at the inside corner of the upper and lower eyelids near the nose. Tears move through a passage called the canaliculus and into the lacrimal sac. They then drop into a tear duct called the nasolacrimal duct and drain into the back of the nose and throat. That's why your nose runs when you cry.
Okay, so that's just a little introduction to that right there. Okay, so this actually brings us to the end. And so you see we would have had a lot of time to deal with our rat. So those of you who have a rat at home, I sent it home with at least 2 of you, I think, right? So now's our time to do this. So you have your tray and your tools and your gloves and everything. And so what you're going to be doing is looking through. So what I would have done for you at class is that 2 of you would have had a rat together, and I would have told you how to cut into it, but then you would have been on your own to find these different systems. You would have found the circulatory system, the respiratory system, urinary system, lymphatic system, endocrine system, digestive system, and nervous system. And furthermore, the reproductive system, even though we didn't talk about that specifically in general science, it is another system in the body right there. Okay, so what's going to happen next is you're going to see me dissecting a rat and telling you all that stuff. Okay, so just take a look. Our little guy here, and you can see it's a white lab rat. Okay, so hello, yeah, there she is. Okay, so we're not really studying rats per se, but we are studying mammalian systems, and this is a little mammal. And so what we're going to do is just, we're not going to worry too much about his external anatomy. All right, oh, his little tongue is sticking out right there. Okay, so we're just going to look at the internal anatomy today. All right, so we're going to place our rat like this on her back, his or her back, right? You can tell if it's a male or female based on the genitalia, and this one is a female. It also looks like, see that red stuff there? Probably this one's been injected with some, there's some blue, some stuff to show off the veins and the arteries. I typically don't like those because it makes usually a mess, but we'll see how it does here. Okay, so we're going to start by cutting right up here and making an incision as if we were going into surgery. Our nice sharp knife right down the middle there. Okay, and you should be able to cut through the skin and then through the muscle. It's a pretty thin muscle down here for a rat. Okay, all right, and you can see I'm starting to expose some internal anatomy right here. Sorry about my hands getting in the way now and then. I'll try to make sure and move them out before I finish looking at a particular area. Okay, so what the idea is when we have a dissection is to have this exposure, right? We want to be able to see stuff. So we're going to try to open a big window right here. So I'm going to make a slit here, and that'll open this way and this way. Looks like I may have just cut through. No, it's just muscle, I guess. All right, so that's open there, and then we're going to get to the top right here and do the same thing. Okay, so right now what I've hit is the rib cage, the breastbone right here, and the knife seems to be going through it pretty easily. Sometimes we'll pull out scissors at this point. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second for you to look at it. Also, I'm going to pause this real quick and just I'm just going to dump out this liquid that's in here. Okay, so let me do that and I'll be right back. Okay. Much better. I get a better exposure right here. So I'm just going to bring this up to take a look at a lot of the stuff that's in here. Okay, so we can see lots of stuff. One thing that's really cool, see this right here? That, I cut through it, unfortunately, when I was slicing it up, but that is the diaphragm muscle right there, the diaphragmatic muscle separating the peritoneal cavity from the pleural cavity. So in the pleural cavity, you can see right here, those are the lungs. We'll get those out in a minute. That's the heart. This big thing is the liver. We have all the guts in here. We're going to get into this, the stomach. Yeah, I think so. This turns out to be a female, and those are babies. Okay, it's a pregnant female. All right, so we're going to get to each one of these. We're going to end up taking all of this stuff out. So I'm going to start with the peritoneal cavity, which means the abdominal cavity. These right here are little fat bodies. They're just in there kind of stabilizing the organs. All right. I guess she was a pretty fat little rat here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is take out the uterus. Okay, so this is the female with the uterus. Keep in mind this creature was bred for scientific use. Okay, so here's the uterus. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 little babies in there. And we'll get to this in just a minute, okay? Let's see what else we've got here. Okay, so that was all kind of being pushed out of place, all the rest of the organs here. So we're going to see here, okay, that is part of the gut that I was looking at earlier, because the stomach, if you can see, very stomach-shaped right there. And then this big thing, of course, is the liver. Notice how the liver has the blue stuff on it. That is that injected latex to show that there's a lot of vessels there. And so it's okay. It doesn't look like it's made too big of a mess here. So I'm just going to remove. So right here what I'm doing is the end of the digestive system, of course, is going to be where it ends up at the anus. So I'm just going to cut that right there. Okay, that's the very bottom of the colon there. And I'm going to gently kind of try to pull these organs out. You can't see it from where you are, but I just found a kidney and a second kidney right there, which I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to leave those in, okay? I want you to see where those are. All right, and this is actually coming out pretty nicely. I'm going to show you everything. So this is everything. This is upside down. This is the way you saw it. Here's where I cut, right there. We're going to see part of the gut. We'll get to that in just a minute. So I'm going to dump a little of this fluid out again. And I'm going to show you, can you see? I hope you can see that. See those two kidneys? Look how beautiful. They're just sitting, and look at the fat around them, okay? Sitting up against the back of the wall right there of the peritoneal cavity. So I can take them out. They look like little kidney beans, right? Take the second one out. Right there. Okay. So now you can see I've got a cleared out peritoneal cavity right there. So we'll just move her aside a little bit, and let's take a look at the digestive system. Now we know the liver has a lot of jobs to do, okay? And so it is part of digestion as well. So let's cut the liver away from the rest. All right, so that's what it looks like. Now, often I can find that gallbladder in here somewhere, but sometimes the preservative tends to wreck that. Sometimes it just looks like a little indentation on the liver. So see all the lobes of the liver right there. Am I showing you? I hope I'm not out of screen. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm not seeing, unless this is it, that might be it right there, the gallbladder. So remember the liver is making bile to help digest fats, and then it's stored in the little gallbladder right there, which that might be it. Not exactly sure, it's hard to tell. Okay, so there's our liver. Here comes this is the spleen right here. All right, kind of smooth like that. All right, and we have, let's see if I can find the pancreas real quick. Sometimes those are hard to find as well. Rats have them, so I know it's here somewhere. That looks like part of the gut. Oh, there we go. Right there. Right there. Okay, so the spleen and then the pancreas. Unless that's a little part of the liver again. Yeah. Well, maybe that pancreas will show up. This one, it came out separately, but it feels and looks a lot like the liver. A pancreas usually is kind of like a little balloon type of a structure. Okay, so digging through the guts here. So let's go ahead and open up the stomach. Maybe this is it, y'all. Look on this side. It's not as, because it was completely separate. That must be it. Okay, let's call that our pancreas, okay? It would be close to the stomach like that because the pancreas is going to release enzymes into the small intestine. All right, so I'm going to cut open the stomach and see if we've got anything inside. If maybe she had a little last meal before coming to the... Oh yeah, it just looks like some gooey feed, just some feed. Yeah, sometimes they feed them bigger things. All right, so if we cut open the guts, you can imagine what we'd find in there. All right, so we're not going to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our uterus right here. We'll cut this and see if we can find what's inside here. All right. I sure hope you can see that. I don't know if it's going to be in focus for you. Do you see that little baby right there, y'all? There's our little baby rat right there. There's the head. The eyes. There's a little arm. Let's move it down just in case. See the little arm right there? Little eye right there. Okay, so there we go. There's our babies. All right, remember this was bred for this reason right here, y'all. Okay, so I know I have a huge respect for life, and it makes me sad on a certain, level, but it is for our educational purposes. That we're learning about the reproductive tract right here of the rat. Here's the digestive tract. We have our liver that's digestive and other things, right? Our pancreas, which we'll look at, has something to do with the endocrine system, right? All right, so let's get up into the pleural cavity then. So here you can see we have the rib cage. Okay, so I've cut through the sternum, which is the breastbone, and I'll move away some of these little membranes right here, and you're going to see behind here this pink thing. It's really pink because of the latex that's been injected in there. That's the heart, and I'll get it out in just a minute. And then we'll also get these lungs out, okay? Surprisingly small, these lungs. All right, there's our diaphragm right there. Very strong muscle. Remember, that's keeping the pleural cavity separated from the peritoneal cavity so that we can have the right amount of negative pressure for the lungs to operate properly. All right, so I'm going to come up underneath these lungs and try to get this whole group of organs out, okay, without damaging too much. So I'd like to show you what they look like. So I'm cutting through at the top. It would be the aorta, and then the trachea as well, along with those vessels like the pulmonary arteries and veins. All right. Oh, wow, that's cool. Check it out. As I pulled it, some of those giant vessels came with it. Okay, so here we go. There's the trachea, all right? It's the windpipe coming into the lungs. So let's see if we can see the lobes of the lungs. See those? Oh, beautiful. And if you were here, I'd have you feel it and squeeze it. It's sort of like a little sponge. Okay, we should have 2 lobes on this side. Yep, there's the second lobe there. Okay, 1, 2, and then 3 on this side. Accommodating for the heart, of course. Okay, so here's our heart. It is a 4-chambered heart, and you can see right here at the top. So we have the ventricles on the bottom and the atria on the top, and the auricles, which are part of the atria, they kind of stick off the top like a little extra space there. All right, so I'm going to cut the lungs apart from the heart, away from the heart, and I'm going to see if I can cut this heart open. Sometimes we can see the chambers in the heart, sometimes we can't, because it's quite small. And you might be surprised at how small the chambers are, actually. But remember, they're pumping the whole totality of the blood supply through the body. Okay. So there's the heart. You can see it looks just like a heart, doesn't it? All right. And there are big vessels coming up here. Right there. Here's the top. Okay, so I'm going to cut it open this way to see if we can see those. I'll bring it back up to you. I hope that was, I'll put it a little lower in case it was out of focus or if I was out of view. Okay. Here we go. I can't see the camera while I'm doing this. All right. It's very meaty. This, by the way, would be called an organ meat if people eat organ meats. They're supposed to be good for you. All right, so you can definitely see the ventricles here. Okay, there's a little blood in there, clotted blood. See if I can get that out. Forgive my use of this up off the tray, but I want you to be able to see. Yeah, that's just clotted blood inside that chamber. So that chamber's pretty nice size, isn't it? So you can see the ventricle, and this is actually another ventricle, and our auricles, our atria, are up here and not quite as visible because they're much smaller. But this is ventricle on the bottom part of the heart right there. Okay, so that's the majority of the internal organs of everything we see. Now, I do not try to get the brain out. It turns out their bone on their head is very, very strong, and the brain is very small. And so while I've had students in the past who have attempted that and actually succeeded at that, it's not necessary to see it. I guarantee you there's a brain in there. Okay, gang, I hope you enjoyed this dissection. If we were together, it would have taken us longer. We would have taken each of these parts separately, okay, and looked at them. All right. I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, so that's it. Yeah, so very good. Those of you who have your own rat, if you want to go ahead and start working on those now, or maybe you already did it, I don't know, that's fine too. You will not have a pregnant female more than likely because those are separate. They order those separately and they're more expensive and that kind of thing. So you can look and see if you have a male. You'll be able to see the genitalia on the outside of the body pretty easily. And then if you want to try to get the brain out, that's up to you. You can go for it, okay? And be very, very careful. Remember that sharp blade right there. Okay, y'all. Well, it was a good year, a strange year to end it like this. I'm sorry we couldn't have ended it together. I would have liked that, and to see you again and that kind of thing. So, next thing, all we have to look forward to now then, of course, is just getting that final done and me getting the grades out to you. And I will work hard to get that in a timely manner to you. I sure enjoyed having each one of you this year in class. I liked having our small class. It makes, to me, I don't know, I just like having each one of you a little more individual, contact with you like that. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful summer. Get some good sunshine and some exercise and keep your lymph system nice and healthy, and have fun with your family and church and that kind of stuff. I love you, and I hope you have a great time, and I hope to see you next year possibly for more classes. All right, y'all. Bye.